Hello, and welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and I'm really thrilled you're joining us today. We are broadcasting, in a sense, to a very specific and dedicated audience today. So a huge welcome to the Funeral Channel Network listeners who might be tuning in right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's great to be here with this specific audience.
We are diving into a topic that fits perfectly into your world, but honestly, it's a topic that it touches every single human being eventually.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's one of those subjects that sits right at the intersection of technology, design, and profound human emotion. And usually people don't really think about the mechanics of it until they're standing right in the middle of it.
Exactly. We're talking about memory today. We are talking about the architecture of grief in the digital age. Specifically, we're unpacking this really fascinating shift in how funerals and memorial services are actually being conducted. We're basing this deep dive on a very comprehensive guide titled Designing Professional Digital Memorial Flipbooks for Large Screens. And we're also layering in some really great educational context from organizations like the Funeral Program site. So that is our source material for today.
It's a dense topic,
Yeah.
definitely, but a completely necessary one.
Yeah.
Because the landscape of saying goodbye has changed more in the last, say, 10 years than it probably did in the previous 50.
That is a bold statement. But when I really think about it, you're right. I think most of us have this very specific, almost cinematic image in our heads when we hear the word funeral.
Oh, for sure.
You picture the stained glass, the dusty wooden pews, the hushed tones, the smell of lilies, and crucially for our discussion today, that little printed paper program you hold in your hand.
The trifold or the bifold card, it's an absolute staple.
It is. You hold it, you maybe crumple it a little bit when you cry, you put it in your pocket, and you take it home. That is the tradition. But what we are seeing in the source material is that the venue of grief, if we want to call it that, is getting a massive technological upgrade.
Yeah, we aren't just seeing services in traditional churches anymore. The geography of grief has completely expanded.
Where are we seeing them now, mostly?
Well, we're seeing services in event halls, in these highly modernized crematoria chapels that honestly look like modern architectural landmarks.
Right.
And in celebration of life, venues that look more like high-end banquet halls or even theaters. And even in the traditional spaces, the hardware is changing rapidly.
Yeah, the hardware. Because it's not just a microphone and a wooden podium anymore. We are talking about high-lumen projection systems, massive LED walls that would, frankly, make a rock concert jealous, and these huge wall-mounted widescreen televisions.
And that brings us to the central conflict of the sources we looked at, the real hook of our conversation today. You have this incredible technology, a 10-foot glowing screen at the front of the room.
Right.
And then you have this deeply intimate, very personal need to share the story of a person's life. So the main question is, how do you take the intimacy of that little printed pamphlet and translate it to a giant screen without it losing its soul?
That is the key phrase, isn't it? Without losing its soul. Because I have to admit, my very first reaction to hearing the phrase digital memorials is a little bit skeptical.
Sure.
It sounds like it should be easy. I mean, I have a laptop, I have the photos of the person, I have the obituary text right there. I'll just, throw it into a standard slideshow maker, put it on a continuous loop, plug in the HDMI cable, and I'm done. Right.
And that right there is exactly the trap. That is what the industry actually calls the casual slideshow trap. And frankly, it's where a lot of services completely miss the mark.
Explain that to me. Why is the casual slideshow considered a trap by these design experts?
Because it creates a severe disconnect.
Yeah.
If you just throw a looping reel of photos on a screen, it often feels like, well, a screensaver.
Oh, I see.
It becomes background noise. It feels temporary. Or worse, if you just project a standard PDF of the paper program up there, it looks entirely static and is often totally unreadable. It lacks a narrative flow. It lacks the gravity that the occasion actually demands.
Okay, so today we are really distinguishing between that casual, throw-it-on-the-screen approach and the specific subject of our deep dive, the Digital Memorial Flipbook.
Exactly.
Now, before we get into the real nuts and bolts of the design, define that term for me, because Flipbook makes me think of those little stick figure cartoons I used to draw in the corners of my math textbook in middle school.
It's a valid association, but in this specific context, it is something much more elegant. A digital memorial flipbook is a screen-optimized presentation that specifically mimics the experience of turning the pages of a physical book. It's not just a slide that aggressively dissolves or wipes into another slide. It is a visual representation of a booklet, like a program or a photo album, literally opening and turning its pages on the screen.
So it's skeuomorphic. It's deliberately trying to look like a physical, tangible object on a flat digital screen.
Precisely. And that distinction isn't just about aesthetics, it's deeply psychological. It's not about fast-moving images or flashy digital transitions. It's about creating a flowing visual narrative.
Right.
It uses a page turn sequence intentionally. The mission of this specific design style is to use technology to create what the sources call a shared visual experience. It bridges the gap between that paper program resting in your hand and the collective experience of everyone in the room looking up at the screen together.
I really love that concept, shared visual experience, because grief is inherently so isolating, right?
Oh, incredibly isolating.
You feel very alone in your own head and your own memories. But looking at something together as a group creates an immediate connection. Okay, so we have our baseline mission. We are going to explore how design, tech, and human psychology smash together to make this actually work. We're going to break this down into the physics of the screen, the core design principles, the storytelling elements, and the actual technical execution.
Let's start with the reality of the room itself, the actual physics of it.
Yes, section 1. The physics of the big screen, or, as I kind of like to call it in my head, why good enough is absolutely not good enough.
That is a perfect title for it, because this is exactly where the DIY approach usually falls apart completely. You have to deeply understand the environment. We are talking about large screen celebration displays.
Right.
This isn't your 50-inch living room TV. You might be dealing with a 100-inch LED panel or a commercial projector throwing an image 20 or even 30 feet across a stage area.
So play devil's advocate for me for a second. Why can't I just design it on my laptop and plug it in? My laptop has a stunning display. The photos look crisp. Everything is colorful. Why doesn't that just translate directly to the big screen?
It all comes down to the scale problem. When you're sitting at your desk designing something on a 13-inch or 15-inch laptop,
right,
you are roughly, 18 inches away from the screen.
Right. It's a very intimate distance. It's right there in front of my face.
And at that distance, on a high-definition personal screen, everything looks perfect. The 12-point font looks huge and readable. The subtle photo details look sharp. You think to yourself, this is great, everyone will love this.
Yeah, you get a false sense of security.
Exactly. But then you plug that laptop into a venue system. Now, your audience isn't 18 inches away.
No, they're in the back row of a massive hall.
They're 30 feet away, sometimes 50 feet away. That 12-point font you use for the reading or the poem, it's completely invisible. It's just a smudge. It becomes what designers call visual noise.
I hadn't really thought about the basic math of visual acuity like that. It's not just about making the file bigger. It's about the relationship between the font size and the viewing distance of the farthest person in the room.
Precisely. It's the text issue. Text that is crystal clear on a personal device becomes utterly unreadable from the back of a room. And, it's not just the size that changes, it's the lighting. This is a crucial factor people almost always forget.
Lighting? You mean like the ambient light in the actual venue?
Yes. Think about going to a cinema. When you go to see a movie, what is the very first thing that happens right before the film starts playing?
The lights go down. It gets pitch black.
Pitch black. The projectionist has total control of the lighting environment. That gives you perfect contrast on the screen. The blacks look deep black, the colors pop, the text is sharp. But at a memorial service, you can't just turn all the lights out.
That's a really good point. People need to see, Grandma needs to see where she's walking safely. People are looking down and reading their paper programs. The officiant needs light on the podium to read their notes.
Exactly. You always have ambient light. Often it's harsh overhead lighting or sometimes daylight streaming through large stained glass windows, and all of that washes out the projection screen.
Right, it fades the image.
So if you designed it using a subtle gray text on a clean white background, which looks very chic and minimalist on your laptop, it completely disappears on a projector screen with the room lights on. It basically becomes a white ghost on a white wall.
That's a nightmare scenario. You're sitting there trying to read a beautiful, touching tribute to your loved one, and you're just squinting at a blank square on the wall.
And then there's the third pillar of this physics problem that the source material brings up, resolution, or The pixel problem.
Oh, the Minecraft effect.
Minecraft effect, exactly.
Yeah.
If you take a photo that looks acceptably sharp on a smartphone, maybe it's only 600 pixels wide, and you aggressively stretch it to be 10 or 15 feet wide on a wall,
It just turns into giant blocks.
it turns into jagged digital noise. And here is the insight from our source material that I found really profound, actually. This isn't just a technical failure. It's an emotional failure.
So, that's a strong way to put it.
Because think about the audience's goal. You are trying to remember a loved one's face. You want to see the sparkle in their eye, the specific curve of their smile. When that image is heavily distorted or blurry, it creates an immediate emotional disconnect.
It takes you out of the moment.
It feels careless. It subliminally says to the audience, we didn't care enough to make this look real. It pushes the viewer away rather than drawing them into the shared memory.
That is heavy. So demanding high resolution isn't just about being a snob about technology. It's a literal form of respect for the deceased.
Exactly. The ultimate goal, according to the source, is legibility and emotional clarity. You have to ruthlessly prioritize clarity over information density. You need high-resolution assets, deliberate and generous spacing, and highly simplified layouts.
You aren't trying to cram a Wikipedia page onto the wall.
Right. You're trying to project a feeling.
Legibility and emotional clarity. I really like that pairing. Because if I can't read it, I can't feel it. Or rather, the feeling I get is frustration instead of being moved by the memory.
Exactly. And that concept leads us directly into section 2 of our deep dive, the core design principles. If we accept that the big screen is a harsh and unforgiving environment, how do we actually design for it?
The source material outlines 3 main pillars here, right? Restraint, hierarchy, and pacing.
Yes. Let's unpack restraint first.
Okay, because when I get my hands on any video editing software or presentation tool, my immediate impulse is to use all the toys. I want the star wipes. I want the 3D flying text. I want the sparkles.
And that is exactly the impulse you must resist at all costs. The source explicitly calls for an anti-commercial approach.
Anti-commercial, that's an interesting term. Explain what they mean by that.
Think about a commercial presentation, or a fast-paced YouTube video, or a TV ad. It's designed specifically to grab your attention, to keep your brain stimulated, to sell you a product or an idea. High energy, fast cuts, things zooming in from the sides.
Right.
A memorial flipbook has the exact opposite goal. It is not trying to sell anything. It is trying to honor someone.
So no dramatic Ken Burns effects sweeping across every single photo.
Use it incredibly sparingly, if at all. The entire goal of the page turn, the core flipbook mechanic itself, is to be smooth, subtle, and natural. It reinforces a feeling of calm reflection.
Because if the transition is too flashy, it's distracting.
Exactly. If it's too flashy, the audience stops thinking about the person who died and starts thinking, wow, look at that fancy tech. You want the technology to be entirely invisible. You want the screen to act as a window into the past, not a wall of special effects.
That makes total sense. You never want to upstage the memory with the method of delivery. Okay, let's look at principle number 2, visual hierarchy. We talked a bit about text size earlier, but this goes much deeper than just making things big.
It does. This is about controlling how the human eye travels across that giant canvas. You have to handle text very differently than you would on paper. Headings, the person's name, crucial dates, these need to be instantly recognizable anchors on the screen. But here is the phrase from the source material that really struck me, and I know it struck you too.
Yes, the compassionate aspect of typography.
The compassionate aspect of typography.
Oh. That phrase literally stopped me in my tracks when I read the guide. We don't usually think of fonts as being compassionate. We think of them as functional or stylish. What does compassionate typography actually mean in this setting?
It means fully acknowledging the mental and emotional state of your audience in that room. They are actively grieving. They might literally be crying. Their cognitive load is already maxed out just by being there.
Their eyes are physically tired from crying.
Exactly. They are processing a massive loss. If they have to sit there and squint or struggle to decipher some curly, incredibly fancy script font that looks like ornate wedding calligraphy, or if they have to race to read a dense paragraph before the slide automatically changes, that creates acute stress.
Right. It interrupts the emotional flow.
It pulls them out of their grief and puts them directly into a state of frustration.
Which is the last thing you want at a funeral.
Precisely. So choosing a clean serif or a bold sans serif font, something very standard and clear like an Arial, a Helvetica, or a Georgia, isn't just a boring design choice. It's a profound act of kindness.
I love that.
It subliminally says to the audience, I am going to make this as easy as possible for you to absorb so you can just sit back and feel.
That is really powerful. Design as an act of care. Okay, principle 3 is pacing. And this feels very closely related to the whole don't make me rush idea we just talked about.
It is entirely related. Time just works differently in a memorial service. Silence is heavier. You need to consciously allow space for quiet reflection. The flipbook must move slowly enough for true absorption.
Is there a specific rule of thumb the experts recommend here, like maybe 10 seconds a slide?
It always depends on the specific content on the screen, but generally speaking, slower is always better. And importantly, the source makes a huge point about the difference between automatic timing and manual control.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Because in a live service, sometimes the eulogy goes long.
Or the background music swells at a certain point, or a speaker just needs a moment at the podium to compose themselves because they're choked up. If the slideshow is just barreling forward on a preset autopilot, it can feel incredibly robotic.
It can feel indifferent to the emotions in the room.
Right. Exactly. A professional-grade flipbook often incorporates the option for manual control. That way, the operator at the back of the room can match the specific rhythm of the service in real time. It actually breathes with the service.
It breathes with the service. That's a beautiful image. It's responsive rather than rigid.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the physics down, we've got the design rules established, but I want to go back to that core flipbook concept.
Yeah.
Why are we so obsessed with making a high-tech digital screen look like a traditional paper book? Is it really just nostalgia?
It's definitely not just nostalgia. It's deeply rooted in psychology. And this brings us right into Section 3, Bridging Tradition and Tech.
Right, because funerals are deeply traditional events. As human beings, we generally don't like radical sudden change when we are in the middle of grieving. We want comfort. We want the familiar.
Exactly. Tangible keepsakes, printed programs, prayer cards, those little laminated bookmarks with a poem on the back have an enduring cultural importance. People hold on to them for decades. I bet you have one in a drawer somewhere at your house.
I do, actually. I have my grandfather's trifold program. It's in my bedside table right now. I see it every single time I open the drawer to look for a phone charger.
And that physical object acts as an anchor. It proves the person existed. It proves the memorial service happened and that you were there to honor them. Now, the digital flipbook isn't trying to replace that physical object. It was trying to act as an extension of it.
The source material places a huge emphasis on visual continuity.
Yes.
Which means what, practically speaking?
It means the giant screen at the front of the room should look like the paper in your hand. The digital flipbook should use the exact same cover photo, the exact same typography, the exact same layout style and color palette as the printed program.
I see. So you look down at your hands, you see the paper program, you look up the screen, and you instantly recognize the same visual language.
Yes, and that creates a powerful sense of safety. It reassures the family and the guests. It prevents the massive technology from feeling intrusive or alien. It doesn't feel like, oh, here comes the distracting tech gadget.
Right.
It feels like, oh, they've just graciously made the program big enough for all of us to share at once. It feels like a very natural, respectful evolution of a tradition.
It creates a totally holistic environment. It's not a jarring disconnect. So let's talk about the actual anatomy of this thing. If we are mimicking a physical book, what are the digital chapters?
The source guide breaks it down beautifully into 4 parts. First, you have the cover, which exactly mirrors the printed program's front page. That's your establishing shot. It stays up on the screen while people are finding their seats.
Okay.
Then you transition into the structured elements. This is where you might display the readings, the poems, or the detailed order of service.
Which is actually incredibly helpful. If you arrived late and didn't get a paper program, or if you're like my dad and left your reading glasses in the car, you can still follow along.
Precisely. It's highly practical and inclusive. After that, you move into the curated photos section. And really note the word curated there. Not all the photos. We'll get to that trap in a minute.
Right.
And finally, the closing. This is usually acknowledgments, a legacy message from the family, or a final goodbye image.
I want to really double-click on that curated photos part, because this takes us squarely into Section 4, storytelling through design. This is where I think most families really struggle. You have a dusty shoebox full of old prints, or a Google Photos album with literally 3,000 images. How on earth do you choose?
The biggest mistake people make here is what the source calls the chronological trap.
The chronological trap, meaning start with the baby photo on a rug and end with the old age photo in a chair.
Right. It seems totally logical when you sit down to make it. You think, here he is at 2 years old, here he is at 10, here he is graduating at 20, here he is at 80. It's a straightforward timeline.
But isn't that the story of a life? Why is that a trap?
It's the biology of a life, but is it the emotional story of the person? When you sit around and think of your grandfather, do you remember him in a strict chronological timeline?
No, definitely not. I think of him in flashes. I think of him in his woodworking shop. I think of him laughing really hard at Thanksgiving dinner.
Exactly. Human memory isn't strictly chronological. It's thematic. So the source strongly suggests thematic grouping for the photos. Don't just show the audience the person aging linearly. Show the audience who that person actually was.
Give me a practical example of how you'd structure that.
Sure. You might create a family section,
Mm-hmm.
then create a service section if they were a military veteran. Create a hobby section. For example, if he loved fishing, you put the black and white photo of him fishing at age 20 right next to the high-res digital photo of him fishing at age 70.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Because then you immediately see the passion. You see the core continuity of his character across 50 years.
Exactly. You force the audience to connect the dots. They realize, wow, he loved being out on that lake his entire life. It creates a much more cohesive, powerful, emotional experience. It tells the viewer who they were, not just when they happened to exist.
That is a huge epiphany for me. You are curating the life, the essence of the person, not just the calendar dates. And there's always, but with this stuff, what about the quality of those older photos?
Right, the tricky part.
We touched on this with the physics section, but here is the harsh reality. A lot of the most sentimental, important photos are terrible quality. They are faded old Polaroids, or they are scanned at a weird crooked angle, or they are those tiny little 3x5 prints from the 70s.
This is the immense challenge of visual integrity. The source is very firm on this rule. High-resolution imagery is the ultimate goal. But, as we know, you can't magically make a tiny, blurry old photo 4K.
Right, you can't just yell enhance at the computer like in a cheesy spy movie.
Not without it looking incredibly weird and fake and AI-generated. So the design workarounds are absolutely crucial here.
What are the specific tricks the experts use?
The main rule is do not blow a small, low-res photo up to fill the full screen. It is fundamentally disrespectful to the subject to make their face look like a giant, blurry smudge. Instead, you keep the photo small on the screen.
But then it looks tiny on the big screen, right?
Right, so you use a nice, neutral, textured background to frame it. You make it look like a digital matte in a physical picture frame.
So you're actively embracing the small size. You're making it a feature, not a bug.
Yes. Or, alternatively, you use a carefully designed collage. Group several of those lower quality images together on one slide, so the viewer's eye dances between the memories rather than fixating on the heavy grain of one single blown-up image.
That's brilliant. So you basically design your way out of the technical problem. Don't force a tiny 3x5 print to be a 10-foot mural.
Exactly. You frame it with dignity.
What about text integration during this storytelling phase? Eulogies are often quite long. Do we put the full text of the eulogy on the screen while the person is speaking?
Absolutely not. The strict rule of thumb here is to avoid large blocks of text at all costs. No one wants to read a novel on a glowing projector screen while someone else is actively talking at the podium. It completely splits the audience's attention.
It's that cognitive overload again. Your brain is trying to read and listen to two different things.
Right, so you use excerpts, short, punchy passages. Find a key quote that captures the absolute essence of the speech, like, "He was a man of the sea." Put that on the screen. That's enough to anchor the moment.
And again, there's a really important accessibility angle there, isn't there?
Huge. There are always people in that room who might be hard of hearing. Or maybe the acoustic bounce in the hall is just really bad. Seeing that key sentiment displayed clearly on the screen helps them process the emotion of what's happening. It actively includes them in the moment rather than leaving them confused.
This brings us perfectly to the overall flow of the event. Section 5, the narrative arc and the shared experience. We've built our beautiful pages. We've carefully curated the thematic photos. Now we have to actually play the movie for the room.
Think of the digital flipbook as having a narrative arc that directly parallels the emotional arc of the service itself. The opening is all about identity. It anchors the room. When guests walk in from the lobby, they see that main image, that name, those dates. They instantly know they are in the right place, and it sets a tone of respect.
It's the establishing shot of a film.
The middle is the heart. That's where your tributes, your quotes, your thematic photo groupings live. That's where the deep tears and the unexpected laughter actually happen during the service.
In the end.
The closing is reflection, a legacy statement, a final beautiful message like gone but not forgotten, lingering on the screen as people file out.
And when everyone in that room watches this progression together, something really magical happens. The guide calls it the collective moment. I want to really dig into this because I honestly think this is the core why behind our whole deep dive today.
It absolutely is. You have to contrast the individual experience of reading a private paper program with the communal experience of viewing a large screen.
Right.
When you read a paper program in the pew, your head is tilted down. You are in your own private bubble. It's an isolating private experience.
I'm just reading to myself. I'm isolating with my own thoughts.
But when a beautifully designed flipbook is on the big screen, everyone's head is up. Everyone is physically looking at the exact same image at the exact same time. You get these incredibly powerful moments of collective recognition.
Oh, I've definitely felt that. When a certain picture comes up, maybe a funny one, like him wearing a ridiculous Halloween costume 30 years ago, and the whole room just kind of ripples, you hear a little chuckle start in the front, or a collective heavy sigh of recognition.
That right there is the immense power of the shared visual experience. The digital flipbook actually becomes an active part of the morning ritual. It influences and guides the emotional rhythm of the service. It unites the room in a way that individual, separate paper programs simply cannot do.
It's exactly the difference between reading a funny book alone in your bedroom and watching a great comedy movie in a packed, crowded theater. The emotion is exponentially amplified because it is shared with others.
Precisely. It socially validates the grief. It says to everyone, we all see this, we all feel this loss together.
Now, we have to transition and talk about the boring stuff that is actually, secretly, the most important stuff. Section 6. Technical precision and ethical responsibility. Because, let's face it, if the tech fails, the magical collective moment is instantly ruined.
The technical safety net. This is utterly vital. You cannot ever, under any circumstances, rely on the venue's Wi-Fi.
Never rely on venue Wi-Fi. That is just solid life advice in general, not just funeral advice.
But especially at a funeral. Just imagine the spinning buffering wheel popping up right in the middle of a deeply moving, tearful tribute. It's an absolute disaster. It breaks the emotional spell immediately. The source guide heavily emphasizes the offline rule.
Meaning everything has to be downloaded.
The presentation file must be completely downloaded, saved locally to the machine playing it, and ready to play flawlessly without any internet connection at all.
And checking compatibility, right, like widescreen formatting.
Yes. If the venue's screen is 16.9, which almost all modern TVs and projectors are, and you or the family designed the presentation in 4.3, which is the old square TV style, you get those massive black bars on the sides.
Or worse, the venue system auto-stretches the image to fit the screen.
Oh, the auto stretch. That everyone's face looks weirdly wide and distorted.
Yeah.
That is profoundly not respectful. And what's interesting is the source frames this kind of technical preparation as a form of care.
That's a really interesting perspective. We usually think of tech support and AV setup as, well, IT work. It's cold, it's mechanical. But you're saying getting the tech right is an act of care.
It is deep, deep care. Preventing technical interruptions allows the grieving family to focus entirely on remembrance. If the video crashes, the family is suddenly stressed out.
Right, they panic.
They're trying to troubleshoot a laptop while crying. They are embarrassed. They're angry at the venue. By ensuring flawless technical precision, you are actively protecting their grief. You're creating a secure, safe space for them to mourn.
That is a genuinely beautiful way to look at tech setup. Competence is compassion.
Competence is absolutely compassion in this industry.
And speaking of helping and empowering families, the source clearly mentions that this doesn't have to be built from scratch by a professional graphic designer every single time.
Right. Organizations like the Funeral Program site offer pre-built templates and extensive educational resources. This is all about empowering families.
Because let's be totally real here, when you are in the middle of planning a funeral, you are exhausted.
You are incredibly overwhelmed. You have a million urgent decisions to make in a matter of days. Flowers, the casket, the music, contacting guests, organizing catering. Asking a grieving family member to design a complex digital presentation from a blank canvas is just too much to ask.
So these professional templates act as a vital guide. They basically say, put the high-res photo exactly here, put the short text exactly here, and please do not use Comic Sans.
Exactly. It completely demystifies the design process. It helps families make informed, aesthetically pleasing decisions without needing a 4-year degree in graphic design. It gives them the necessary guardrails they need to easily create something dignified and beautiful.
And finally, we need to touch on the ethics of design. The outline specifically mentions the phrase, dignity over spectacle.
This is the core mantra for anyone doing this work. Just because you can do something digitally doesn't mean you should. We have to constantly think about consent and representation.
What exactly do you mean by consent in this specific context? The person has passed away.
True, they have passed, but their memory is very much alive. And the surviving family is sitting right there in the front row. You have to deeply think about the specific photos you choose to display. Does that photo reflect the individual respectfully?
Ah, I see.
For example, maybe there's a really funny photo of them completely drunk at a wild party 30 years ago. It's hilarious on a private Facebook group among old friends. But is it appropriate to project on a 10-foot screen in front of their elderly grandmother, their young children, and their former boss?
Right. It's context collapse. Just because an event happened and there's a photo of it doesn't mean it belongs on the massive memorial wall.
Exactly. It's about handling sensitive information with immense care, ensuring the visual representation is true to who they really were, but also highly respectful of the solemn setting. It's a delicate balancing act. And the professional designer, or even the family member taking on this role, has a strict responsibility to be the curator of dignity.
Dignity over spectacle. I think that's a fantastic rule to live by in design, honestly.
Absolutely. It applies across the board.
So let's wrap this deep dive up. We've gone all the way from the literal physics of pixels, talking about lumens and visual noise and resolution, all the way to the deep ethics of human memory. It's been a huge journey. Looking ahead into the outro section here, what is the future of this digital memorial space?
The future is inevitably just going to be more. We're going to see larger screens in venues, much higher resolutions, 8K and beyond, flexible LED displays that might seamlessly wrap around the walls of a chapel, maybe even holographic projections eventually. The underlying technology will just keep getting better, cheaper, and flashier.
But the core principles we discussed today, do those stay the same?
The principles absolutely must stay the same. Clarity, restraint, and compassion. No matter how incredibly high-tech the venue's screen gets, the fundamental human need for a slow, thoughtful, shared moment of reflection simply won't change.
It's amazing to think about. We started this deep dive just talking about putting a PDF on a TV screen, and we ended up talking about the fundamental psychological nature of shared grief.
That's the real power of intentional design. It's not just pretty decoration. It's literally how we facilitate and frame human connection during our hardest moments.
So, to summarize the key takeaways for you, our listener, the Digital Memorial Flipbook is the ultimate bridge. It takes the static, personal, tactile keepsake of the past and gracefully translates it into the flowing, communal, large-scale narrative of the present. It uses the familiar visual language of a physical book to make the massive digital technology feel human and approachable.
And by doing that, it ensures that even as we move deeper into a digital age, we don't ever lose the necessary solemnity and the profound intimacy of saying goodbye.
Here is my final provocative thought for you to chew on, listener, and this is something that has been really sticking with me since we started analyzing these sources. We live in a modern world where almost everyone is completely obsessed with being seen. We post, we overshare, we broadcast our lives, we meticulously track our views and our likes. But there is a massive fundamental difference between being seen and being remembered.
That is a profound distinction.
Being seen is just about getting temporary attention. Being remembered is about forging a lasting emotional connection. In a world full of frantic digital noise, constant mindless scrolling, and infinite disposable content, perhaps the most radical act of modern technology isn't using it to speed things up. Maybe the most genuinely radical thing we can do with these giant venue screens and high-tech projectors is to use them to consciously create a moment of slowness, to use them to carve out a quiet shared space where we all just stop and actually remember.
That is beautifully said. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today, especially to our Funeral Channel Network listeners. It's a heavy topic, but an incredibly important one for all of us. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.